Well, I think we can kind of get started here, guys. There's probably going to be more people join us as we go through this, but thanks for taking time out of your evening for, a little bit of Formula Champions talk and Kalmbach Feeds talk and, everything in between. So I'm Levi Richards. If you've been on our Facebook page or any of our social media stuff, unfortunately, you've got to deal with me a little bit. I just happen to do a lot of that stuff, but we've got a real treat for you tonight. I think we've got somebody really knowledgeable that I work with and does a really nice job. And on our team, I think he's as successful as anybody has been. Let's go ahead and jump on. We'll do a share screen here so I can show you our little intro page here. If you guys do have questions, while we're through this, don't be afraid to shout out, or we will do a question and answer later on. So here we go. Let me make sure I've got everybody in. All right, there we go. So our guest speaker tonight is going to be Jordan Gilbert. Jordan's from Greenville, Ohio. If you've heard of Crystal Creek Farms, you haven't been under a rock. This guy, they do a lot of winning. They've been around a long time and really know what they're doing. So you can see some pictures here just that he's kind of been a part of. And, it's been many champions. Jordan, I tell you what, one of the things that I remember of you is back when I was showing, you were kind of a little kid because you're younger than me. You were showing a shorthorn steer, and what were you, like third or fourth overall at Ohio State Fair with the shorthorn, right?
I was third overall. I'll tell you, that guy judged that for that show for the second year. We were third overall the year before, and he picked two shorthorn-looking steers to win, a plus one and a shorthorn one. And we thought, heck, we're going to get him. We're going to go get a shorthorn. The next year, he picked two black ones, and we stood third overall again.
Yep. And then, as you got older, my brother kind of showed against your sister. Of course, your sister had a really good show career and did real well. But, even before we worked together and didn't really know each other that well, we always probably kind of saw a lot of each other showing. Been great. No. But so our guest tonight is Jordan Gilbert. Thank you for joining us. I really do appreciate it. I bounce a lot of ideas off of Jordan when we're talking about maybe some new products and different supplements and different feeding strategies. And I mean, this guy's been really good on the steers, but maybe even better on the heifers. So I just like having him to bounce ideas off of here and there. So I'm glad that he can join us tonight. Let's see. So we're going to talk about a little bit of selection. I'm going to do a little bit more of the steers. Jordan's going to do the heifers. But I had to throw in that picture that is literally older than me, been in 4-H books since forever. You guys have all seen it, I'm sure. This is the picture of what a market steer should look like. It's come a long way, obviously. But, I mean, we still want steers that have muscle. Muscle expression is got to be a number one priority, I think. Very closely followed by structural correctness. But, we still want a long, level, wide rump. And we're not going to go through all these things, but they still do kind of apply today. Now, the one thing that I may not totally agree with is, see that picture up on the top right? That steer, they talked about having a patchy tailhead, and it got cut off a little bit, but it maybe even said like a flatter lower quarter. And to me, we want anything but a flat lower quarter. We need some bulge. We need some stifle. We want to see some expression. So I did throw in a picture of a steer. This is one that we showed, my little boy showed last year, and it was a purebred shorthorn. Not to get all shorthorn crazy on you, but I think this one shows one that's opened up and wide skeleton, but still square in its build, and then has some muscle expression to go with it. So I think that one's a little bit more modern picture of what they should look like from behind. So just to kind of relate that into one that, has won recently and done well. This was actually a steer. I've got a little bit of personal connection to this one. I sold this steer, actually picked him out as a little baby. He was just a few weeks old and got him from a good friend of mine, Steve Sukup. And he came to our place for a while in the fall. But these Becker boys from Michigan, boy, they do a good job. And they won quite a bit with this one throughout the winter. This steer was many time top 5, and it shows in Ohio and Michigan, and just had a really good career. The question was always, was he going to stand the test of time? Because this one was like a January 10th. I mean, he was pretty old. So they did just a wonderful job feeding him, and some help there from Gerald Green. I mean, this one just held his freshness and body, and you know, he was always very sound, but square hipped and just got stouter as he progressed and big middled. And his front end was probably my question. And it just held together, and he stayed so fresh. So, yeah, I mean, that to me, that just was a really good picture of today's ideal market steer. So this one did well at Michigan Livestock Expo, made that Sale of Champions. I think they call it the Celebration, but yeah, just a kind of a more modern picture, and one that had a cool little story and career to go with it. Jordan, I'm going to let you talk about these heifers. Go ahead and tell us what we're kind of looking for and some selection.
Yeah, now on these heifers, I mean, this picture is pretty out of date. I mean, this is what you'll probably see in most of your beef books when you're learning. But, I mean, that heifer having no belly, I think Levi's got the next one where he puts a line under there. But
there you go.
This is really what we want now. We want that deep swoop back through their flanks. And, I mean, I'll tell you, if they're not like that now, you sure better have that belly hairy to fit them like that. And I know there's some good guys out there that can do it. But the other thing is, you know, you want them feminine fronted, and you want that long, clean, crisp neck up through the front, not a lot of throat, not a lot of dewlap, brisket. And I would say the other most important thing is that big, square, long, level hip. I don't think these heifers now have to be as muscled up as we once wanted them. Maybe 10 years ago when we were shown, I know that's been a major emphasis on our cow herd. Is we've got a lot of cows that go back to monopoly, and we've been trying to breed that stoutness out of them and get them a little flatter and a little longer made, like what they're picking today. And I think that's what we'll see here. And if you look at that heifer on the right with the girl holding the banner, I mean, you see that big belly and them hips and how her level is coming off her tail head. And that's what we're looking for.
Now, one thing I'll point out here, and, you know, if you guys can tell, you know, where I drew that red line there, one thing this says is strong pasterns. And yes, we do want strong pasterns, but in this picture, I don't feel like we correctly see the cushion that we get.
They're talking about beefers right now.
Oh,
let's see if I can cut some noise out. There we go. But you know what I mean, Jordan? They're almost, I hate the term, but they're using it, squishy footed. You know, that's a big, basically we want a lot of set and cushion down there at the ground.
Yep, I would agree with that. I tell you, there's times when you look at some of them, and I've got some babies out running now, and you almost wonder if they're too squishy. But
yeah,
but that's what we want now, and that's the way we got to build them.
Yeah. Now I threw you a picture there, you know, just because the heifer in this little cartoon, if you will, sure doesn't have much for rib shape. In fact, it originally said trim middled, and I took that out because if you pick a trim middled heifer right now, you're going to stand like fifth in class at the very best. So I whited that out, but you can just kind of see the explosive rib shape on the heifer on the right. So, I mean, that's one thing you can't do without right now. So,
I'd say that's probably one of the most important things after making them sound.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to say that I necessarily agree with it. I still like to see a little bit of muscle in these girls, because at the end of the day, we've got to be able to produce muscle with them, you know, but that's the way they're being picked. I guess we got to go with it.
I don't disagree, but we got to give the guys, these judges, what they want.
Exactly.
And sometimes what they want is not what we like, right?
Right. Yep. All right, we'll keep going. No tangents for me today. Oh, talk about this heifer. This is a cool one.
Yeah, this is a heifer that's done really well I think ever since the calf. I mean, she's really gotten along for the Binnicker family here in Ohio. And I mean, you can just see in that picture, I mean, she's really good fronted, nice and clean up, extended through her neck. Soft. Levi's talking about pasterns. If you really look at that picture, look how soft that girl is on her pasterns. And she's really got that deep middle back through her flank. And I'll tell you, that's going to be one heck of a cow for that family.
You bet. Yeah. Now, I'll throw this in. We did a little Facebook Live with this girl's brother, actually the one that's holding the banner. And this kid's a wealth of knowledge, just did a really good job talking to him. But the thing that amazes me, I saw probably 10 or 20 pictures of this heifer throughout her entire career. And she was fed Formula Champions like from day one. But her most impressive picture to me was the very last one taken. It's this one. Like very rarely can somebody hold a show heifer together that's being shown that hard, that well. Like she won as a calf. you want as a big heifer and like everywhere in between. It just blows my mind that you can keep one so right for so long.
Yeah, and it shows that family did a really good job with the feed bucket.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, well, come on.
So here's a little bit kind of structure.
No.
One. Hey guys, if you don't mind, I'm
I don't know where it is
going
that far.
to everybody. Let's see.
Really don't like that song. It's Grayson's favorite song, but you know.
Not too much
And
interference.
Grayson is a very annoying child. Kyle?
Listen.
You can't say you don't like the
Hey
song.
guys, if you get a chance, go ahead and mute yourselves. I'm trying to mute everyone. I don't know that I'm doing it
Oh,
right.
it's fine, but it's not like, wow.
Sorry here, guys.
I mean, we pretend to.
Here. I found it. All right, cool. So here's a slide about structure, and this is so freaking important, you know, both on steers and heifers, you know, and you can kind of, you know, decide how important it is, but I can tell you structure ranks right at the top of my list. And there's some major differences between these two steers. So let's talk about the one on the left. If you notice, like right from the shoulders down to the ground, this guy is super straight. He doesn't have a lot of angle to his shoulder. He doesn't have that cushion down at the ground like we just talked about on that last heifer. He's a little bit off from hooks to pins. His tailhead kind of sits down into him. From his stifle into his hock and again down to the ground on his back too. Just doesn't have that angle, that cushion, and that softness. Now let's compare him to the one on the right, one that's just super level from hooks to pins. His tailhead comes up out of him a little bit more correctly. I love the angle to his shoulder, and if you notice, that same angle kind of correlates down to the ground in his pastern. That's really, really cool to see. When one can do that so well, they usually just float through the ring. I told Jordan I was hoping to throw this picture. It was a slick steer of a steer that I picked to win a show last year in Texas. And I like it because it's a picture of a slick steer, so you can see all these angles so well. But that's exactly what just drew me to him, was the correctness of structure, and he had the muscle to go with it and everything else. But the correctness of structure and skeleton in him was just near perfect. You know, and I think that's so important, you know, especially when we're picking them out, because, you know, as they get bigger and they mature, you know, any minor issues are going to become major issues. I mean, wouldn't you agree, Jordan?
I would definitely agree. I mean, those issues, they may not show themselves when those calves are young, or, you know, you're going into fall and just starting with them. But I'm going to tell you, them things start pushing that 1,000 and getting them finished weight, they're going to really start showing those structural issues. And, you know, that may be where your calf breaks down at the end and not be ideal when you get to the show.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to a guy here just a couple weeks ago and just talking about some baby calves, and he made a really good point. And I guess I never thought about it like this, but you can buy one that's maybe needs some middle, or one that's a little bit harder feeding, and you can feed some condition onto them. You can even buy one that needs a little bit of muscle expression, and quite frankly, it very well could come along. You can't feed correctness onto a steer. You know, if it's not there in the beginning, it will absolutely never be there. You cannot correct structural issues. You can maybe make a move a little bit sounder, but you can't correct a structural issue with any supplement, whether it's Formula Champions or not.
You're exactly right.
Yep. Oh, some style and balance. You know, sometimes there's just almost something that you just can't describe that you like more about one, but I think it's pretty easy to see between these two that one's got some style and just kind of has it going on, and the other one's just kind of a feedlot steer. But you know, the thing that I can say about this Baldy, structurally, he looks very sound. He looks very correct. He's got some middle. He probably has some muscle expression. It looks like he's got some extension to his front end. He's just kind of missing that wow factor, you know, and I think a little bit of it's balance because he's a little bit heavier chested than what he is, like, say, through his flank. So the balance isn't quite there, that whole symmetry. But, I mean, you know, Jordan will tell you how good that one on the right-hand side is because he raised him.
Yeah, he's pretty nice calf.
Yeah.
We don't raise many show steers, but what few we do, I mean, I am very, very opinionated on structure and balance. I mean, when you have a cow herd, you want them girls to be able to move and walk. And when it comes to all my calves, I mean, I'm hard on them. And this was one of the better show steers we've raised in the last couple of years, and we're trying to dabble in it a little more. But he was super cool, super sound, really good in his hock, really good at the point of his shoulder, and balanced up really well, even though he's kind of wild marked.
Yeah, no kidding. I don't know. There's a lot of people tend to like them that way, so I do
I
love
know. I know.
them. All right, so just to talk some feeding methods here real quickly, and we're getting closer to going into the actual feed program. But there's kind of three ways to feed these guys. One would be self-feeding. That'd be, pretty common in creek feeding or on feedlots, say an old steer stuffer. That would be if you have one big giant feeder that holds bulk feed and, you keep it full all the time and the cattle come and go as they please. Like I said, probably most common, especially on the show cattle side, it's the most common in creek feeding. The middle one is full feeding. So that's if you feed them in groups. This is kind of how we feed them, like during sale time and stuff like that, because we keep them in lots of usually 8 to 10 at a time. And, you feed them in a bunk, in a group, and the cattle come, twice a day or 3 times a day, however many times you feed them. But usually they clean it up about every feeding and they come back the next feeding to the bunk. Now, if you really want to be competitive, we'll talk about a little way to feed them called feeding the phenotype here in a minute, but we need to hand feed them. So that's if you feed them individually. Now, this picture maybe takes it to the extreme, and there's a lot of families that have to do this if you keep them in a big pen and they're not in individual runs or anything. But, this one's tied up to one feeder. And I would think every animal in that pen is probably tied up to its own feeder to eat. If you keep them in their own pens, you don't have to tie them up at every feeding. But basically, hand feeding is if you feed each individual animal its own meal. It eats once or twice, 1, 2, 3 times a day, whatever, but it gets its own regimen every time. It doesn't ever eat in a group. And I think if you really want to be competitive, this is probably something you really need to consider. So,
Yeah, Levi, I would agree with that. And then on full feeding and hand feeding, even if they're in a group, I would say consistency of the times you feed is probably one of the most important things. I mean, if you're going to feed them 6 a.m., 6 p.m., or whatever hours you got, try and feed them 12 hours apart. The other thing with hand feeding, I can remember my sister's last full year in 4-H, and we had, I think, 10 head in the barn that summer, and 8 of them were heifers and 2 steers, and everything was hand fed a different amount of feed or type of feed. And you want to talk about really putting your mind to the test on all those feeds, but hand feeding is what will really take you to the next level.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, we can relate about all these species into the same thing. You want to really be competitive, you need to hand feed about every species. But, just for example, say like I had one of the guys that I talk sheep feeds with and that we get some sheep from, he was over today. We went through and I've got 8 individual pens for those sheep, and we wrote on a dry erase board what every single lamb gets, and I always, no matter what, I can look at a lot of sheep and tell you how to feed them, but I always take his opinion in to consideration, and try to make sure that you always have somebody there as a resource, no matter where you're at on the food chain and how much experience you've got. I think it's always good there to have somebody to bounce your ideas off of, whether it be a breeder or just somebody else that's been real successful there to help you. So when you see them every day, you don't always see, some of those flaws or some of those little things that come on. So. All right. So this is feeding the phenotype. This is kind of a little slogan that I came up with a few years ago. And I think it just really harnesses the entire idea of, of feeding each individual animal and what we're trying to accomplish there. So feeding the phenotype is reading the physical build of the animal, choosing feeds that accentuate their good attributes, correcting their negative attributes. So I've got 2 pictures here of 2 steers that, quite frankly, both had a pretty good life. Both were shown successfully, did a little winning here and there. But, as you can tell, they're entirely different types and kinds. The steer on the left-hand side was one of the last ones my brother ever showed, but was really successful with. But, this guy is square made, he's longer bodied, longer fronted. Because of his height, that's probably the biggest difference between these 2. Because of his height, he was a little a little harder feeding. So we had to pour the fat to this guy, I think, pretty young. Where the one on the right-hand side, this is one we sold a couple years ago. We were constantly just kind of pushing the brakes and kind of pulling him back a little bit, because he could have very easily gotten just way too fat and blown himself apart. So, I mean, Jordan, like you said, you had 10 different head on 10 different feeding regimens. That's exactly what you're doing, is feeding the phenotype.
You're exactly right.
Yeah. And, even in the heifer world, there's going to be some of these heifers that are flatter made or maybe don't have their body right away and just don't body down. You got to feed those a little bit differently than the ones that are maybe clubbier bred and they're there from the beginning, you know. So, all right.
Yeah, and I would say that some of the heifers are most important because a lot of those heifers, they can get pretty chunky pretty quick, and knowing what you got or what she's been, or, you know, and that's the other thing. Talk to the breeder if you know him, or the person who sold you the calf, because they may know or give you an idea how it's going to feed.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking to the breeders, I think is essential, you know, and I don't think, even if say the breeder is pushing for a certain brand, I don't think just because talking to the breeder, you know, I think we need to more just have that discussion of how this one's going to grow and what products we need to feed. You know, don't just say, oh, hey, my breeder says feed Formula Champions, so I'm going to go get a Formula Champions bag. That doesn't tell you everything you need to know. You know, we need to look at, you know, what products is going to do what, because we've really done a good job putting the program together. It really comes down to how we're going to feed it, what products are going to work at the right times. All right, so before we get into the actual feed programs, this would be our 2021 product guide. If you do not have one yet, get with your local dealer. If you don't have a local dealer, you can always message us on the Formula Champions Facebook page or email us based off of our website. But these books really lay out the entire program, I think, really well. We spend a lot of time putting these together. There's a lot of great information in these books. So get a hold of one. If you can't, get messaging us, and we can maybe send you one. So, Jordan, I'll talk about Optifirm XL and see if I missed anything or anything you want to throw in.
Yeah.
This is a component of every complete feed in the Formula Champions line. You know, I like to say that the Kalmbach feeds phrase is that we go the extra mile, which is, you know, is kind of a nice little motto, but what does it actually mean here, and how do we relate it to the show feed line in Formula Champions? We really do, because I don't think there's another show feed company putting something like this in every complete feed. So this is a gut health product. It's a patented yeast product that is trial tested and proven to further enhance digestibility, specifically in forages, but it really works to help break down every bit of feed that we put into these show stock, you know, whether it be a chicken or, you know, a steer, two entirely different, you know, animals, but this really helps keep that gut healthy. It stimulates some appetite, especially in ruminants. This works extremely well. That's what it was originally designed to really work on. And just make sure you're getting the most digestion out of every pound of feed that you put in front of them. Is there anything that I missed or you want to throw in there?
No, I think it's really important. I mean, I've got this, and the other thing, we carry it in our tubs, and I mean, I love it because it's in my cow tubs, and it's helping aid in the, you know, that we don't make the best forages all the time. Depends on the weather and what this does, and helps that cow and even those calves keep healthy rumens and healthy guts all the way through. And, you know, the big thing is too, most of the times a show calf, from the minute it's weaned till the last day it gets kicked out, it's stressed its whole life. I mean, whether you're breaking it, working it, and this really helps reduce stress, helps keep that gut healthy and everything in the digestive system.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you said that. So, yeah, perfect. Oh, and the other thing is you can always buy extra Optifirm XL if, you know, you got one that's maybe off feed or needs a little bit of help. Like you said, you know, an unhealthy rumen is not going to get you very far. So we've always got to have them, you know, first and foremost, a healthy gut to start with. So I'm glad you said that. So as far as calf starters, well, I guess before we even talk the calf starter, we'll talk this show cattle advantage base. If any of you guys have, say, grain bank corn or like to mix some feed at home, this is a really good way just to get those added components of a show feed into your feed program at home. You know, it's got a lot of those extras, and at 400 pounds per ton, this is just a really good way to be able to mix, you know, the rest of your show feeds, maybe with your own corn and oats that you have at home, and you know, be able to kind of hand mix some of your own feeds. And, you know, the thing is, we feed as many champions off of like those show cattle advantage base mixes as we do with our complete feeds. So now, as far as the calf starters, I know, Jordan, you say you've got your favorite, and I'd probably tend to agree, but let's first talk about the show cattle creep. This is a good product for probably for those more like maternal. I think it relates more to like those Angus, semi, hardcore maternal Herefords, some of those operations more so than the show cattle creep or more so than the Accelerator, probably because on those operations, we have to make sure we get enough frame. This being a higher protein feed is going to help grow them a little bit more and get some rib shape on them without pushing much fat. But I know here in Ohio, on anything even somewhat clubby bred, we've got to get those babies a little bit chubbier to get them sold, early fall. So I know I like that show calf Accelerator, but go ahead and tell us about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think that show calf Accelerator, I mean, really for the fall and trying to get some bloom and a little bit of fat on these animals is what I like to use. It's still got a high fiber in there. It's at 14%, so I don't need to worry about them over consuming or, getting out of control with it. But it's a little less fat and it's 12 protein. And I think, a lot of our feeds have steam flake corn. This one's just mixed, just regular cracked corn. And I really like that, just kind of creep feeding off of it and getting some cattle ready in the fall. And then it's got the yeast in it, which really helps in the fall when I'm weaning and stressing those babies and cattle. So,
right. I mean, this one we've had luck with, and the reason I probably like it is you can do a lot of things with this feed. You can creep feed with it and kind of keep them on it all the way until 500-600 pounds, or we got Johnny Adams. He'll feed one about all the way through, on show calf Accelerator. It is just a good complete feed that you can kind of use as your base no matter where they're at.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and if I've ever had one go off feed, I always bring them back on show calf Accelerator because I know they're going to eat it. It's got that high level of Optifirm XL. It does help stimulate their appetite, but it's just really good for them, good for their gut. So
very palatable.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. It's got the cracked corn, not the steam flake. This is, I think, the only one in the line. It seems like that smaller particle size, maybe just for those younger calves, just tends to work maybe a little better. So,
yeah, I think when I've been doing some tests at home, and I've thrown some of that, I've seen them sort that steam flake a little out maybe at young ages under maybe 400 pounds. So I like this because it's a little more mixed consistently and kept in there.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So I'm going to talk our steer program, I guess. This is the bulk of it. This is what we're going to be looking at from 500 pounds on to the end. So I think no matter what size your steer is, no matter what phenotype you're feeding, even if you're on a different, competitor product right now, we can be looking at using one of these products, one of these 4 products on about any steer and get them right. That's the great thing. And if we wanted to, we could even break it down further and say, we could say any of these 3, because really those last 2 are used kind of interchangeably. But I'll start with our 1/3 Pro Grower is my go-to. If there's ever any question, what should our steer be on? I always say, let's start with 1/3 Pro Grower and then, pictures, or I'll try to get out and see it. And, we can kind of assess from there. But we came out with this feed mid 2018, I think. And it was the upgraded version of the original 1/3 blend, which years ago, I'm sure you Shane. So Dave Shane was like the guy behind 1/3 blend, and when it originally came out, it was called 1/3 1/3 blend. But it's our number 1 seller in the line. This feed, it is so hard to find a feed that can perfectly trio protein, fat, and fiber. A lot of times you can pick 2 of the 3, and 2 of those 3 will work. This feed, we can grow them with, we can get some rib shape on for the show ring, and they're going to get nice and chubby on us without burning them out. This one, we can keep growing them. Where maybe like that Pro Finisher, we hit one too young with this one's going to probably just start burning one out a little bit. But the 1/3 Pro Grower, I would say we need to be feeding from 500 pounds at least to 900 or 1,000 or more. Just depends on the build of the steer. I don't like saying those weights generally, and I refuse to put them on a chart because, just because your steer weighs 950 doesn't mean we need to be on Pro Finisher. There's been a lot of steers that have been fed from start to finish on the 1/3 Pro Grower and done really well, and they've won. That's the nice thing is this can be a one and done feed. Now when we really need to get either some condition and some fat on these steers, and they're not quite getting that finish from 1/3 pro grower, maybe say they're a little bit harder feeding steer, that's pro finisher into play. This one's the highest in energy. If you look at the numbers, you'll see they're both 4 fat, but we drop a level in protein from 12 to 11. And that drop in protein allows that fat to work all the better. And it is just higher energy. You know, the energy is fat in terms of feed. And this one's number one ingredient is steam flake corn. It is going to put the finish and the condition on them. So, you know, that's kind of our good tool to really get one finished. A lot of times, like, this is the time of year I think you want to be feeding this. You know, we can get them chubby early and continually chubby through the show or the show season, the winter show season. But, you know, I think come late winter, early spring, that's when I want to just pound the crap out of these steers and really get them fat, because, you know, a lot of times they're going to slow down in their gain and stuff, you know, in the summertime when it warms up. So 1/3 pro grower would be our step 1. Pro finisher would be our step 2 if we need it. Not every steer is going to need it. Like I said, those easier feeding steers, say like that black and white steer that Jordan raised, you know, a couple slides ago. I bet you that steer probably never needs a pro finisher. You know, he probably stays chubby enough, right?
Yeah, that steer would have been on a grower his whole life, still probably is. I know that. I mean, he wasn't going to be one that needed super finish, super fatten real fast. I mean, the other thing I would say, Levi, I mean, when we were feeding steers, the most important thing we did is, you know, right now was probably the time we would always switch to a finisher if we needed it. But what we were doing was, you know, right now we were weighing them weekly, and we knew where we were at. We didn't let that get away from us. And I think that's a huge thing in the steer thing, is knowing where you're at. Too often when somebody asks me for recommendations, I say, well, what's your calf weigh? When's your end point? And they have, you know, they can't give me that info, and it's hard to make recommendations when you know, the steer needs to be 1,350 pounds at July fair, but we're in April and I don't have any clue what he weighs. It's hard to give recommendations.
Right. And if you're behind, I'm sorry, but you can't play catch up in July. You know, in those hot months, it's impossible to really get them where they need to be, and maybe not sacrifice hair. If they will eat a corn-based product in July or in August, that's great. A lot of times they're just not going to hold their hair from that hot of a feed, you know, during those hot summer months. So, and you know, that thing is, I like feeding pro finisher the hottest feed when we need to be shucking hair, you know, right now. So it's like, take advantage of it, you know, use something that's got the most corn. Let's get some gain. Let's get the utmost condition and, you know, finish on those steers right now. So then, you know, like 100 days out, we can pick something like a barley blend or a mega champ to kind of fine tune them in. So, yeah, so the barley blend would be kind of our I'm not going to call it basic, but it's a little bit more simplified barley-based ration. I hate saying simplified because these feeds are all fortified extremely well with like that Optifirm XL, trace mineral, vitamin, every micronutrient known to mankind. You know, these do have that fortification to the fullest extent. But, you know, compared to the Mega Champ, the Cadillac in that category, I think this one's a little bit more simplified. Now, the Mega Champ kind of takes it a few steps further. This is still a barley-based ration, but it also has a high level of spelts. Spelts are kind of a unique ingredient because they add some starch, which would be like a, you know, almost the starch of like a corn. But they also add that extra shell, so it adds extra fiber to their diet as well. It gives them more forerib, more flank in spelt-based diets. But so not only that, it's barley and spelts based, but then we actually add 3 of our premium top dresses right into that feed. So we'll talk a little bit later about Show and Glow. That's included right in the feed. Our Filler Up, which is our high fiber top dress, is included right in that feed. And then there's actually an extruded fat nugget we like to call Power Finish is included right in that feed as well. I mean, that you want to talk about the most complete feed in the industry, not just in our line. I don't think another show feed company is making a feed quite like Mega Champ, and I am pretty proud of it because, you know, Kyle Nichols and I put this together ourselves. I was kind of a part of that one from the beginning, and the funny thing is I made it for one of our steers. It was my brother's last year. I designed that feed for one specific steer, but, you know, our boss Jeff, he got wind of what we had put together and said, hey boys, we're going to sell this one. So I really didn't have a choice, even though it was my own little custom mix. But, you know, the cool thing was that steer ended up winning junior nationals and had a pretty good run. So it had a little bit of success right to that name, that Mega Champ name right from the beginning. But I mean, is there anything I missed or anything you want to throw in on those last two?
No, I just totally agree with you. I mean, on that pro finisher, I think when you're shucking hair and it's you're going through the spring months and here in Ohio right now, we're at 60 degrees, 70 degrees, maybe on a good day. So it's not super warm and they can kind of shuck out on that high corn diet. And then, 100, 120 days out, if you get them on that barley blend with a little, that barley helps lower body temperature a little bit. And if you get them in and out of the sun where their heat is, you're going to have a whole lot more hair and a whole lot better looking calf too.
Got it.
A little smoother fat on them.
Yep. Yeah. I didn't even mention that. The reason why we want to use a barley-based ration in the last 60 to 100 days is, it puts a more uniform, more smooth and even coated layer of fat on those steers. So when the judge is feeling them over the ribs and down in that flank, it's not a patchy fat. It's a firm handling, more smooth and uniform fat. So yeah, all the more reason to use it. You mentioned, being able to get a little bit more hair on them. There's actually a few micronutrient and micro ingredients in that Mega Champ to help skin and hair health as well. Not only just in the show and glow too, but even separately into that Mega Champ feed. It truly has everything. It's a little bit more expensive because those top dresses are included right in it, but you don't have to buy anything else with it. I mean, when we won Junior Nationals, we fed Mega Champ and grass hay, and that was it. There was nothing else. So, yeah. So just to show you guys, what's that?
That'd be a relief from mixing all them supplements with it.
Oh my Lord. Yeah. Well, you think about it, like how many people, especially when kids are off school and home doing their own work, which is great. But, I know like my 8 and 9-year-old, like they run out and do their own chores and I cross my fingers and pray to God every time that they do it right and don't throw in too much of this or that. But like with Mega Champ, there's no guesswork, like you just feed 12 pounds or 15 pounds of Mega Champ or whatever. You have everything you need. So that was kind of nice and reassuring. Yep. So this next page is the same products, but this is an ad you'll see in a lot of magazines that are circulating right now. We've put this in a lot of them, and it just kind of breaks down the 3 steps. First step is 1/3 Pro Grower. Second step is Pro Finisher, if you need it. The third step would be Mega Champ, or the Barley Blend would be like your cheaper version of that. So just makes it a little bit easier to comprehend. Like I said, even if you're not on a Kalmbach product right now, I think you can be jumping in and transitioning onto any of these feeds at any time. And just because of the added components for gut health that we put in these, I don't think you're going to have any issues. They're probably going to eat it better. Their intake should go up. I mean, these products are designed to really perform and do a great job. So, here's a cool, I like these before and afters, but nobody is ever willing to give me a before picture, because usually those are the ones you're not as proud of. But, so I use my own cattle that have been through this barn, not because I think they're the greatest cattle in the world, but they're the pictures I have. So this is a steer that's in our barn right now. Right now he is shaved, so he looks like a slick steer, which isn't always as pretty to look at for us Midwesterners, but this was a steer we bought last fall and have shown a few times. September 7th, this was the day we picked him out, and that's what he looked like. Super green, way overlooked. We bought him out of a group of like 60, and I would go to venture this was one of the most overlooked steers in the entire group, if not the most. Luckily, my wife picked him out. She's got the better eye than me. I have to give her that credit. But no, in only 68 days, he goes and wins his class at the feeder calf show in Louisville. That's not a world champion picture, but boy, is that a huge transition for before and after, especially for 68 days in.
Yeah, so, man, look at the change in his belly and rib shape and across the muscle expression across his top and his rump.
Yeah, it's insane.
That's huge.
Yeah. So, you take one that you can see it's good jointed and made right and square built and good necked. And this is how you build on one. Like I said, you can't feed structural correctness, but if you buy one that's structurally correct, you can feed everything else into it. And that's exactly kind of what you see here. And I'll tell you what, Jordan, this guy was on 1/3 Pro Grower, and that's it. So before then, he was on a mill mix, that had a couple good components on it or in it. But going to 1/3 Pro Grower, this guy just came home and exploded. So yeah, I love these before and afters. If anybody's ever willing to give them up, please let me know. And
and that's proof right there. It shows what these feeds can do if they're fed right.
Yep, absolutely. I'm going to let you take the reins on the heifers. You're kind of the heifer man. So go ahead, just take it over.
Yeah, I don't know how I became that. I mean, when I was young, I used to like the steers a lot more, but as I got over, I figured out that it's maybe a little better to own the factory than own the product made from the factory. And
I would blame your sister's show career on you becoming the heifer man.
Yeah, that's when I got I stepped behind the show halter and back behind the chute. And my sister was a lot prettier than me and a better showman, so I like to work on them behind the scenes, but we really learned how to feed heifers. I mean, we fed a lot of them. Like I said earlier, we had 8 of them in the barn at one time, and they were on different feeds, not, maybe the same feed, but different amounts and different supplements and types like that. But what we've really liked about this program, what Formula Champions has to offer, is the consistency of these heifer feeds. And I think that's huge when you're feeding heifers, because way different than a steer. A heifer's got a lot of hormones running through her once she starts cycling and coming in heat. I think with these consistent feeds, they stay on them and they really want to eat them. And I tell you, I got to beat them away from the bunk so I can actually feed them most days. But we always start our heifers on the heifer developer. It's a higher fiber, higher protein feed there, in a 13 protein, 16 fiber. And why we do that is we want to continue to grow these things until we figure out what we're doing with them. Are they going to sale? Are they trying to push a baby for Louisville? Or are we going, we're not going to be showing these things till after Christmas. And that's why we always start everything on this once we wean them. It's, like I said, higher fiber, lower energy, a lot of cottonseed hulls in it. It's really good to help with depth and center of body while keeping those heifers growing and on track. If we need to kick it up a little bit, like Levi was saying a little bit ago, Megan Champ has spelts. Well, Guts and Glory, the main ingredient in Guts and Glory is spelts. Spelts has a little starch to it, so it's a little more energy to it. But what those spelts do is they're breaking down and breaking apart with that hull, and it's giving us a little more ingredient that we'll use for a little more depth in the flank, a little more rib shape, while increasing some body condition and putting some weight on these heifers. And we lower the fiber a little bit so that we can utilize that starch. That's why it goes from a 16 to a 14 from the heifer developer to that. And I would say if you really need to put middle and belly and depth and rib shape in one, this is a feed you can't go wrong with. It is superb, and they love to eat it. I think a few years ago, Levi and I were talking, and he asked me what I thought would make this whole program go to the next level. And I said, it's a great program, but with heifers, what we always found is we'd get them to the condition we needed them, and there was nothing to ever go to other than, adding a little more oats or adding a little more cottonseed hulls and fill her up to kind of slow them down so that we weren't over conditioning them. And we talked about that, and I said, really, we need something with no corn in it. And that's not too long after that, Levi had a light bulb idea, and Fully Charged became a feed. And I tell you what I like about it is it's got filler up already in it. We don't have to add it additionally. All these other feeds we're probably adding a little more filler up to.
No, I don't know.
Yep.
Did you check the cabinet?
Depth and rib shape, 8 in it. But Fully Charged is one I think you can put them on and you can feed them out. I really wanted to see what it would do. So this fall, we had a couple heifers we were keeping as replacements. And I have 3 different breeds. I got an Angus, a Maintainer, and a Charolais composite in there. They've been on Fully Charged, and man, they look good. They're going to be looking awesome running out there with my cows. But I like it because I knew it wasn't going to get them fat. There wasn't a bunch of corn in there to put that fat in their brisket and their flank and up around their tail head. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think you talked those all 3 real well. It can be as simple as we grow them with heifer developer, we fill them out with Guts and Glory, and we kind of maintain them then with Fully Charged. It can be really simple, but I think these feeds are extremely palatable, and like you said, they just work. It's so refreshing just to put the right feed in front of that heifer and have it do exactly what you need it to.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Here's the similar ad to what we have for the steers. This would be our 3-step program for the heifers. Like we just said, we grow them with heifer developer. We fill them out with Guts and Glory, and we kind of maintain them. We don't like saying holding. Holding's a kind of a bad word. We'll hope we never get to that point where we need to hold one. But we kind of maintain them then with fully charged. With, I guess I should mention, if you ever do need a holding feed for a steer, fully charged is exactly what you need. So, you know, the nice thing is, you know, once we go to hold one, a lot of times what people are going to do is they're going to add beet pulp. They're going to add cottonseed hulls. Maybe they'll add some oats, like you said, you know. But when you're doing that, you're diluting that fortification in that feed. You lose some muscle shape. You lose some overall tone. We don't have to worry about that anymore, you know?
Exactly.
Yep. So
that's what's really nice about that feed. I mean, it's a fully complete feed that you're not diluting the nutrition out of it.
Yeah. They hold their shape. They hold their tone. They stay fresh.
Exactly.
It's so refreshing to have that. Oh, go ahead and talk to these two products real quick before we do our before and after.
Yeah, on that, the Start Right preconditioner is a pelleted 12%, 25% fiber feed that I use year round on all my show cattle, replacement heifers, everything gets it. I'm using it right now with my creep for my babies. I put the Accelerator down first, and then I coat the feed so they can't see the creep feed through it with this. They eat right through it. I think it really helps. You know, I want to say it's a more economical way at a young age to add a little bit of rib shape, add a little bit of belly, and get a lot of fiber into these animals to help keep them growing and keep them and supplement them from what mom maybe's not giving them. Mm-hmm. And natural fill is the same kind of idea. You know, it's a filler fiber product. It's a haylage, and you know you can use this year round. I know we don't ever, when we were going to shows, we never left home without a fresh bag of this, because if they didn't want to eat hay or they didn't want to drink, or for some reason they got there and didn't want to feed, it seemed like every time they'd always go to a natural fill and want to eat it. I don't know what it is. Maybe just a little bit of sweetness being inside like it is, but really good fiber product. And if you don't, you know, if you can't get hay, it's a consistent product.
Yeah. Well, you know, the thing is they do eat this one better compared to some of the other competitor, you know, chopped haylage products out there. And I think part of that is it's corn-free, so it never gets that fermented silagey smell. And its shelf life, I think, has got to be so much longer because of that too.
Well, and we always liked natural fill because of not having the corn in it. I mean, I didn't need to worry about giving them extra corn when you're trying to maybe maintain one or not feed one and get it back.
Yeah. And to go back on that Start Right preconditioner, you know, this is not a top dress. It's a complete feed. You can feed. I've got one right now. This heifer in our barn she's big and juicy and big bellied, but she's got plenty of condition. And we're not sure if we can maybe squeeze one more show in yet this spring or not with her. So she's getting actually 7 pounds of this Start Right pellet and only 3 pounds of show feed just because she likes it, you know. So this is a complete fortified feed. It's not a top dress. You're not diluting the nutrition with this. This is a complete feed. You can feed this just in itself. So
yeah, good point. I didn't say that, but yeah, complete feed, and it's not diluting the nutrition. It's just I would say it's an added dose of fiber is what I really like about it.
Yep, you got it. Okay, so here's our before and after for the heifers. This was one, we had to have just gotten her because that's me on the halter. Otherwise it'd be a little 9-year-old, but that was a heifer we had a couple falls ago. And, you know, structurally she was pretty good, real square built, loved her neck, I loved her genetics. And yeah, I claimed this one way super early. And they probably let her grow and had her a little bit skinnier than what I would have, you know, when by the time it came for me to get her. You know, so we did grow her for a little while with Heifer Developer, but, you know, like you said earlier, it didn't take me long to get on Guts and Glory with her. And boy, the transition that she saw going on to Guts and Glory, she just kind of exploded, you know. And, you know, that's not the best heifer you're going to find in the world, but I think she looked pretty good in that picture. I think she was reserve Shorthorn Plus a few times through the winter. That had to be one of those shows. But, you know, every good thing you see in that picture, we just added all the extras into it. You know, by feeding that Guts and Glory, got a lot more volume. You can see that flank dropped, you know, and you just get a whole lot more of her. And, you know, like we say, you know, you can buy the structural correctness and feed about everything else into it. That's exactly what we did here. Because, I mean, the picture on the left, she wasn't going to win anything looking like that.
Yeah, she just looks young and green, and you got to maybe give her a little more groceries and as far as energies and starches to get her where you want her to go.
Yep.
So there may be some efforts, that come off, and you may never even have to use guts and glory.
Right. Oh yeah, exactly. And some of those crossbreds and clubbies, they may stay on heifer developer or get to, or fully charged a lot sooner than later.
You're exactly right.
Yep. All right. I'm going to let you talk about these stress tubs and stress blocks. If I have anything to throw in, I will. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm a really firm believer in stress tubs and blocks. I mean, even on our cow herd, we keep tubs out to them year round. I also keep loose mineral to them. There's research and data that's been done at universities that shows that a calf will go to a tub and a block 93% of the time, whereas a loose mineral or a product like that, they only go to about 70% of the time. And why they do that is because, one, we make it good and it's sticky and they like the taste of it, but that licking really stimulates the digestive function in the rumen and the gut, and it helps produce the digestibility of the nutrients in the rumen as far as your hays and your feeds, and it helps cattle get the better out of those feeds. Also, what we do with these is they've got the Optifirm XL yeast in it. Like Levi said earlier, it's in all our products because we believe that highly in it, that it works and it does what we say it's going to do. I know when we're showing, even when I'm taking cattle to places, I've always got one in the trailer. Before we come out with the stress blocks, I always kept a tub about half full with me all the time. Cattle are going to shows, or we're even going different places, and I'm bringing them back and forth, different pens. I'd say that, if a calf goes off feed, I think that's one important thing to have for him, because at least they can get some nutrition and some vitamins and minerals from somewhere. And it may help buffer that rumen and to get them back onto feed.
Yeah, and we came out with the 10-pound blocks last year, and COVID kind of killed the excitement. We were really excited about this, last winter, and we were going to do a big promotion at Ohio Beef Expo last year, and everything got shut down, everything got canceled, and our stress block that was new and exciting kind of got pushed to the wayside. We gave away 200 of them at Ohio Beef Expo this year. So if you were there, maybe you were lucky enough to get one, but these are great. They're very economical. I think they retail for like $15. So this is just a smaller, more convenient size, and a lot easier to travel with. Instead of taking a 60-pound tub to your shows, maybe you have a 10-pound block now, or if you've got, 5 or 6 different, pens or whatnot, maybe this is a little more economical and easier for you to handle than buying, 5 or 6 60-pound tubs. We do also carry these in 200-pound tubs as well. But the stress block maybe takes it even a step further than the tub, because it does have some added ingredients for skin and hair condition, and I can't say hair growth, but it has some of the same conditions as our Hair Magic Plus, so it's going to have some of that same effect. So I think it's a good tool to keep in a cool room, if nothing else. So yeah,
I think these are ones you should keep in front of cattle all the time, whether it's
nonstop.
In the night turnout pen or in their pen in the cooler room or whatever.
Yeah. Yep, you got it. All right, I'll talk a few of the supplements here right away, and then I'll let Jordan kind of take over. The Afterburner and Hard Drive, I want to talk now. These are ones we originally came out with for lambs and goats. I'll just be brutally honest about that. However, I have applied these into cattle and have started using them quite a bit, as a matter of fact, in cattle. The Afterburner is great for keeping some of those heifers from getting too fat. There's some other competitor products out. They work well too. But the Afterburner fed at a low rate, I think will help keep them from getting too fat up through their neck and jowl. You can feed it at a higher rate, maybe more like that 1 pound a day if you do get one that is too fat. But, that's just a great way to kind of maybe tone one up and slim one up a little bit. Now, the Hard Drive, I think, has become a little bit of a secret weapon. If you got a steer, it's a little bit weak behind his shoulders. There's a couple bulls out there. As you go through and look at calves in the fall, you just see them. They're a little bit greener, you can call it, but they just don't quite have that full top right behind their shoulders. They tend to break a little bit. I've actually used some hard drive at a pound a day to get them corrected, and it has done the job. I've been really impressed. On a sheep, and I'll tell you that hard drive just makes their top explode. I love that stuff. We feed a lot of sheep here, and we rarely feed one without it. But on cattle, that still does still have its place. Jordan, I guess go ahead and go through the other ones. We'll kind of skip Power Bloom. I think that one applies a little bit more to the pigs. I'm not saying you can't feed it to cattle. It does work. It is palatable, but I think the Moonshine works better. But go ahead and tell us about maybe the rest.
Yeah, definitely. On the Show and Glow is the next one here on this list. It's got a source of omega-3s and 6, which is really in there to help stimulate and maximize skin and hair quality. I know, in our herd, from the time we wean them, we introduce Show and Glow because we're trying to get them turned around as fast as possible and really get that skin coat and get their hide healthy again. And, running out on mama. And I think the proof is when we take them weaned cattle and we start working hair and stuff, it doesn't take any time in law at all to get that fresh skin and hair coming. And it helps with feed conversion. I think there's a palatability with the amino acids that keeps cattle on feed with it, makes them want to eat.
Yeah, so it does have a definite appetite stimulant effect to it, and keeps them on feed once they're there.
I would agree.
Yep.
I would say the next one, Fill Her Up, it's really been a game changer for us. I mean, I would say from the day I wean calves, I've got everything on Fill Her Up. Being a mini pellet, I don't think they can sort it. It gets mixed in well. They eat right through it. It's adding that rib shape. That's all we talk about in these females and these heifers. We need rib shape, depth of rib. That's what we're trying to do. And it's got I don't know if you've seen it at a trade show. Maybe you guys haven't been there when we've been there, but we'll usually set a display up and you'll take a cup of it. And then once we get it wet, like it would be in the rumen, and you see it kind of explode and I guess maximize its potential and grow, it becomes like 4 or 5 times as big as what that cup was. And it's really amazing to see because, that's what it does in the rumen. And what we do on show day, we'll amplify that. So if we're usually feeding, 2 or 3 pounds through the week, we'll put 5 out and we'll get it in front of them maybe 2 to 4 or 5 hours before show, try and really get that fill and that bloom going. Got anything to add, Levi?
No, I think that's a perfect way to put it. Yeah, it feeds dry, and once it hits that moisture, it explodes. It looks great.
Yep. Next one is Hair Magic Plus. It's a melatonin-free supplement, safe to use for both market and breeding stock. I know we used it last year on a bunch of heifers we had feeding for fall shows and things like that. Really, it does add hair. It really helps that hair coat be healthy, stimulates the growth, adds a little bit of finesse to them.
Yeah.
So you may have
to call this thing finesse, and I couldn't get the trademark on it.
What's that?
I said I wanted to name this product finesse, and we couldn't get the trademark on it. Yeah. But we do call it Hair Magic Plus because it actually has some major reproductive benefits. He talked about being melatonin free, which is great. It's safe for breeding stock. Melatonin can mess with the fertility on heifers and whatnot, but this actually has been used and is now started to be used in donor cows, even donor sheep. It's used heavily on sheep and goats because we're wanting to grow more leg shag and more wool and more hair and whatnot on all those, and it's done a really good job there. But it's got components for hoof health and bone health and joint health. So it's got all of these added benefits, even more so than just hair. That's why we call it Hair Magic Plus. But the funny thing is, I don't know if you even know this, Jordan, but the trials that we did on this were done on alpacas. The guys wanted to grow longer fiber on, and they said, even though this is not a cheap supplement, it probably pushes $100 retail, but they said it was still well worth it. They still made money even adding a high dollar top dress like that for hair and what fiber growth. But yeah,
we use this on our donor cows during flushing. I usually start about 45, 60 days before flush and then give them a little bit every day.
Yeah.
The recommendation. And I think we've seen better, stronger, healthy oocytes than anything.
You got it. Yeah. What about Moonshine?
I think this is probably more of your realm. I haven't used much Moonshine.
Well, that's true. You don't want to get them.
Yeah, I'm not using much.
Yeah. So Moonshine would be our liquid fat top dress. It's 98% fat. It comes in a 5-gallon bucket. It's available as your choice flavor, either caramel or cherry. So I always say you got to ask your steer if he wants, what flavor he wants. But the funny, this thing, it's such a good, like, user-friendly product. If you want to get one fat, Moonshine will do it. It is so potent because it's 98% fat. The feeding rates on it are really, really low, where a lot of our competitor products, we're talking about how many ounces per day. In cattle, you'll notice is only 1 to 2 compared to, some of those other ones that are well above that. And sheep and goats, we're even talking by the cc. It's not even a full liquid ounce that they're getting per day, not even per feeding, but per day. And it's being an oil-based fat. We've always got to start on the lowest end of that, because ruminants are very sensitive to oil-based fats. And sometimes if we push it too hard and get them there too quick, we may not get them back. We may cause some issues that are hard to correct. So we want to start really low. We've got a steer, that red steer you saw in that, picture earlier. He's getting like 16 cc's per day right now. And I think it's working really well. We want to get them really fat right now. So Moonshine is the ticket. That's the tool to use. And it's just, it's such a good user-friendly product. So, anything to add to that?
No, I think they did it. I mean, and I will say they do smell, like they say. I mean, they smell cherry and caramel. And
oh yeah, they got
smell
great.
Smell good enough to use myself.
I know. Okay, so we're kind of winding down here. We're through all the products. Just a couple things I'll go through pretty quickly. Just to kind of stay in touch with us, I do highly recommend you like Formula Champions on Facebook or Instagram and Twitter, where we're on all of those, and maybe even a couple more. We do a lot of cool video marketing like we're doing right now. This video is going to be saved and added to our YouTube channel. There's another one that we're on is YouTube. There's just a really good archive of some really useful videos there on how to use these products and when to use the right products. There's some videos where we're even in barns looking at, say a steer, and I can tell you exactly how to feed that steer. Just some good, useful things. You see a video, the boy on the bottom right or bottom left, that's that Ray Beneker that owned that heifer that did real well. And we kind of had just a little chat about the 3-step heifer program here a couple months ago. But lots of cool videos on social media. Our website's also a really good place to find more information, more so than what we even talked about tonight, even more than what's in our product guides, those booklets. There's every last detail on each of these feeds, including ingredient list and nutrient specs and whatnot. So every detail that you need to find is on this website. You can also find winners. You can find information about our jacket program and our cutout square program that benefits any junior livestock organization. Great little header picture, if I might say so. This Morgan Evans getting her hand shaken by Dr. Mark Hogue as she's winning reserve champion lamb at Louisville. So now that one feature, it's good to have.
Always cool to get
Mark
that handshake
on your website. Good.
Yeah.
I didn't mention the bottom right corner there, that little purple rectangle says feeding recommendations. So because we firmly believe in feeding the phenotype and not feeding a weight, there's now that feature that you can upload pictures or videos of your animals and send them to us on that feeding recommendation. The nice thing is it goes right to my phone. And if it's, if I want anybody else's opinion on how to feed these, I can always send it to somebody like Jordan or, Tim Traddles or Kyle Nichols or any of the, great number of people that we have in our toolbox there. I didn't even mention like what I consider our little team of experts. It's a group of about 15 people that are just, the most successful in the show stock world. Those are the guys that really keep this program running. And we go based off of customer feedback and what we need and any customer input. If we're seeing, where there's room for improvement or a tweak or a new product or anything like that. This isn't something where we're just driving from the top. I think we're very much, in the trenches. We get on a lot of farms, and we're kind of a grassroots sales team. So this is a little bit about our Champions Challenge. That would be, if you win a show at the local or county level, you win a silver level jacket. So it's like a nice spring jacket, which is actually what you see here. This boy, Logan Brinker, is clipping a steer, but he's actually wearing a silver level jacket. So that's even the lightweight one. But if you win a state or national level show, you get a gold level jacket. And those are nice heavy duty winter coats. So that's what we've got for you guys. This is kind of question and answer time. So you can either unmute yourself and just ask, or hit that messenger box and you can send us one. So there's no wrong way to do it. But I guess one thing we didn't mention, Jordan, I'll ask you, what do you guys do there for, like, say, deworming? That's something everybody does a little different, but what's your take on it?
Yeah, we always use some safeguard, either, the blocks, or I like to top dress a feed. That way I know they get it into them.
Okay.
Also, we'll use an oral ivermectin.
Yep.
I don't like corn cattle, especially show cattle, because I don't want to burn their hide, and I don't want to give them a reason to lose hair when that's so important and so vital in what we're doing every day.
Yep. That's a good point. I like that. Good. Well, let's see if I can pull up Messenger. I'm going to get out of the share screen here.
To add to that, Levi, that's one thing that's really important, especially I always saw it in this Beef Expo time, because, you're coming in where weather's changing and things are, weather's changing, it's getting warm. And if you see cattle scratching and itching, that's when you really need to get on it to just not only to control the internal parasites, but even externals. Most of those will help control externals too.
You got it. Yeah. I mean, what we do here is when we slicked our steer out, which was the Sunday of Expo, so 3 weeks ago, something like that. We slicked him out that night, and we hit him pretty hard with cleanup too, so a pour-on.
Yep.
And then 2 weeks after that, we did Valbazin, oral dewormer, just to kind of hit him on the outside and the inside real hard, and we should be good to go here, I think, for a little while. But I don't know. I think we like to rotate and do something either topical or injectable or oral about every 30 days.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
That cleanup too is a really good product. I mean, especially if you're not going to be showing right away or go back, If you got some time off, that's when you need to be using a topical one.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't use it a week before the show.
Yeah, I know. So I won't say which one, and I'm not here to slam on any of these products. I think they all work and have their place. But like, we got some new calves in 2 falls ago, and about the time when we needed to be getting them haired up to sell them, I poured everybody as soon as I got them, and boy, they were all shucking like crazy, and getting hair on them around sale time was like pulling my own hair out.
I know.
Yeah. But we'll stick around here for another minute or two if any of you guys have any questions. I think this was a lot of information. Like I said, if you want to recap or go through and watch it again, it is going to be available on our YouTube page. The one thing we didn't talk about tonight, and I think what we're going to do is probably video this another day. It may not be live, but there will be a video available for dairy feeders. I know those are really popular in Ohio and Michigan and even Indiana and some other states, but we've got a great program for some dairy feeders if you guys are interested. Spread the word, tell people in your 4-H clubs. I think these videos that we're putting on YouTube are a great source of information. And, the nice thing is, I think compared to some of our competitor companies, you can reach out pretty easily and get a hold of us. So, Jordan, you got anything? I appreciate you getting on.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, we're here to help you guys, because we want these feeds to work as best they can for you. So reach out and ask.
We know the products work. Sometimes it's making sure you're on the right one. But
exactly.
The feeding that phenotype is crucial. So I guess if we don't have any questions here, you're welcome to submit questions to our Facebook page, Formula of Champions, or that feeding recommendations feature on our website, formulaofchampions.com. you can always type and send your questions there, and you'll get a response, usually via email. So, yeah, we appreciate your time. Anytime is a good time to get on Formula Champions products. It's never too late. So if you ever have any doubt, which ones, get a hold of us, and we can point you in the right direction.
Definitely.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Jordan. Thank you guys all for joining us tonight. Yep. You guys have a good night. We'll talk to you soon.